Hello guys, I'm doing chapter 5 of Sri Sai Charitra, written by Hemant Pant and translated by Indira K. So, yeah, the title of the chapter is Sai's Disappearance and Return to Shirdi. So, Om Sai Ram. So, my obeisance to Sri Ganesh, to Sri Saraswati and Sri Guru Maharaj, to the family deity, to Sri Sita Ramchandra, and my most humble obeisance. I bow in reverence to the most venerable Guru, Sri Sainath. Now, in continuation with the previous story, listen to this account of how Baba suddenly disappeared from Shirdi only to reappear again in the company of Chand Patil. How Baba himself carried water to create a garden. Also, the meeting of Gangagir and other saints. Listen to these stories which are sanctifying. Baba for a time disappeared, but later it was in the marriage party of a Muslim gentleman which came to Shirdi that his this jewel was discovered. Devi Das, however, already had come to stay in Shirdi before that. Later on came Janki Das Gosavi too to live in Shirdi. How all this came about, I shall relate in detail. Be attentive, O listeners, as you respectfully listen to this. In Dukheda, a village of Aurangabad district, there was a Muslim of great fortune by the name of Chand Patil. While journeying to Aurangabad, he lost his mare, and for 2 months she could not be traced. No hope how now of finding her, so thought the Patil, completely dejected and felt very sorry, distressed for the loss of his mare. Finally, he flung the saddle across his back and turned back to go the way he came. By the way, Patil, the surname Patil is given to the head um, of the village usually, and naturally now like every person in the family gets the name Patil, but usually Patils are usually the head of the village. So whether you're a Muslim or a Hindu, it doesn't matter. So yeah. Leaving Aurangabad behind, he traveled about 9 miles. There was a mango tree on the way, under which he saw this gem sitting among men. A cap in his hand, body covered by a kafni, that's a mendicant's robe, and a baton under his armpit. Even as he crushed some tobacco in the palm of his hand, filled the chillum, which is the clay pipe, a wonderful thing happened. As Chand Patil was passing that way, he heard the fakir calling out to him, saying, "Oh, you, come here, smoke this chillum, and then go. Come, rest here a while under the shade." The fakir then asked, "What is the saddle for?" Then the Patil replied, "I've lost my mare, sir." Upon this he said, "Go search along this rivulet." And lo, the mare was found immediately. Chand Patil was astonished and said to himself, "Truly I have met a sage. There is no limit to this miraculous deed. How can he be called an ordinary human being?" He then returned with the mare and came back to the same place again. The fakir made him sit by himself. He picked up with his own hands a pair of tongs. Then he thrust it into the soil in the same place and brought out a burning ember from within the soil. He then placed it on the chillum in his hand and picked up the baton. For there was no water to wet the strip of cloth covering the chillum, so he struck the ground with his baton and the water began to flow out. Dipping the strip of cloth in the water, he then squeezed it out and wound it around the chillum. He smoked the chillum himself and made the Patil smoke it too. The Patil was quite dazed seeing all this. Wouldn't you be? Like seeing a fakir like hit the ground and he gets an ember and then he hits it with a baton and water comes out. So that was no magic, that was real. The fakir then pressed it to sanctify his home uh, by the patil by paying him a visit. The fakir who had come to this earth only for such divine leelas conferred the favor on him. Oh, fakir was then pressed to sanctify his home. That's he asked Chand Patil asked the fakir to come to his house and sanctify his house. The next day he went into the village to stay with the Patil and spent some time there. Later he came back to Shirdi. This Chand Patil was the headman of the village Dhoop Kheda, and his wife's nephew was engaged to be married to a bride from Shirdi. This nephew of his wife had come from marriageable age and had the good fortune of marrying a bride from Shirdi. So, with the bullock carts and horses, the marriage party set out to come to Shirdi in due course. Then Baba, drawn by his affection for Chand Bhai, joined the party too. The wedding over, the marriage party returned from Shirdi. Only Baba remained behind. He stayed back and then stayed on forever. That marked the rise in Shirdi's good fortune. Indestructible and ancient that Sai is, he is neither Hindu nor Muslim. He has no caste, no descent, no family, no gotra. The state of self realization was the core of his being. And Sai Sai, that people called him, is that his real name? No, indeed. Out of respect, he was first addressed as Welcome Sai. That is how he got his name. It was on the day that Baba arrived with the marriage party in Malsapati's yard near Khandoba temple that this happened. In the beginning, this yard was Bhagat Malsapati's. Later, it belonged to Amin Bhai. The marriage party, as it arrived, got down in the same place under the banyan tree. The bullocks were unyoked in the yard in the Khandova temple compound, and then Baba got down there with the marriage party along with all the others. As this youthful fakir alighted from the cart, it was Bhagat who first saw him and received him with the words, Welcome Sai. From then onwards, the name became his proper name. Thereafter, people began to call him Sai Sai. The name came to be used commonly by all. He then smoked the chillam there in Malsapati's yard and thereafter went to stay in the mosque. He quite enjoyed Devidas's company. Altogether, he was happy in Shirdi. Sometimes he would sit in the chowdi, sometimes he would sit in the company of Devidas, or sometimes he would sit in the Maruti temple. He would thus be engaged fondly wherever it pleased him. This Devidas was already in Shirdi much earlier the time Baba came there. Janki Das of Gosavi, Mahanubhavi sect, came to Shirdi thereafter. With this, Janki Das, Maharaj would sit talking, or Janki Das would go and sit wherever Maharaj might be. Both were very fond of each other's company and would have regular meetings. This, their association with each other, was a source of great pleasure to everyone. Both were very fond of each other's company and would have regular meetings. This, their association with each other, was a source of great pleasure to everyone. So also one Gangagir, a householder, a very famous devotee of the Vaishnava sect from Puntambe, used to visit Shirdi frequently. In the beginning, Gangagir used to be quite astonished in his mind to see Sai carry water from the well, holding the earthen pitcher in both his hands. But later, when he met Sai face to face, Bua said very clearly, very emphatically, Blessed is the Shirdi, very fortunate too, to have this jewel among men associated with her. Today he carries pitchers of water on his shoulders, but this is no ordinary figure. It is by the great accumulated merit of this soil he has come to this place. Similarly, one other well known saint by the name of Anand Nath had also predicted Baba's wonderful and divine Leelas. This very famous Anand Nath had set up a mutt, which is a monastery, at the village Yola in the company of some residents of Shirdi. He came to Shirdi. Anand Nath was the disciple of the great saint of Akkalkot, that is Swami Samartha. When he actually saw Sai, he exclaimed, "Oh, he's a diamond, a veritable diamond. Maybe today he lies neglected in a rubbish heap, yet he is undoubtedly a diamond and not a piece of flint." And remember, these were the words of Anand Nath, while Sai was yet of a tender age. And remember, before Sai came to Shirdi, he used to be Swami Samartha of Akkalkot. This is mentioned in the book of Shripad Sri Vallabha. So if you want to check it out, do check out. There is an English translation of that book. Remember well these words of mine. Later on you will be reminded of them. Prophesizing thus, he then returned to Yol. Sai then used to allow his hair to grow. He would not have his head shaved ever. His dress used to be like a wrestler when this Sai was in his youth. Whenever he went to Rahata, he would always bring back with him saplings of marigold and jasmine and plant them with his own hands in desolate places and would also water them regularly. His devotee Vaman Tatya would supply him every day with 2 unbaked earthen pitchers for that purpose, and Baba would water the plants with his own hands. From the stone vessel near the well, he would fill the pitchers, carry them on his shoulders at sunset. He would keep the pitchers under the neem tree. At the moment they were placed there, they would of their own crack on the spot because they were unbaked. So the next morning, Tatya would bring him 2 new pitchers. When fully and properly baked, a pitcher is always better and lasts longer. But Baba would only require unbaked ones. Thus, the potter was able to sell the pitchers without the labor of baking them in the furnace. For 3 years, this was his preoccupation. In that open space, he raised a garden in the same place that today, by lucky chance, people are enjoying the convenience of a vada. And also in the same place, under the neem tree, a devotee called Bhai has installed the padukas of Swami Samartha of Akkalkot. This is Sai Baba's earlier incarnation. So, Swami Samartha of Akkalkot was Bhai's chosen deity, and with great devotion, Bhai used to worship his photograph very regularly. Once he felt he should go to Akkalkot to have a darshan of Swami's padukas and offer a sincere puja with all the attendant rituals to the padukas. So he made all the necessary preparations to leave for Akkalkot from Bombay. It used to be called Bombay before. And he was just about to leave on the very next day when he had to abandon his resolve. Instead, he found himself on the way to Shirdi. Even as he was all set to leave the next day, he had a dream on the previous night in which Swami Samartha exhorted him, saying, "At the moment my stay is in Shirdi, so you leave for Shirdi." Such being the command, Bhai obeyed it with great reverence and left Mumbai for Shirdi, where he stayed for 6 months in great peace and happiness. By being steadfast in his faith, installed the padukas of Swami Samartha under the neem tree to commemorate the vision he had in his dreams. In the year 1912, in the summer of Shravan, that is August-September, during the bright half of the moon, which was also the auspicious Parva Kal, He installed the padukas under the tree, neem tree, very lovingly with puja, bhajan, etc. On an auspicious day, the installation was performed at the hands of Dada Kelkar under the direction of Upasani with all the rites and rituals prescribed by the Shastras. The arrangement for the daily worship of the Padukas was entrusted to a Brahmin named Dikshit, while Sagun Nayak looked after all the arrangement. Such is the tale of the Padukas. This is how these saints, the true incarnations of God, who are without attachments and desires, appear on this earth for their selfless mission of uplifting this world. A few days later, a very astonishing incident took place when the listeners here attentively will surprise them too. Moidun Bhai, a seller of betel leaf, areca nut, tobacco, etc., and Baba had some dispute between them, which flared up, resulting into a bout of wrestling. Both fighting each other rather fiercely. Both were skilled wrestlers, but mere physical prowess cannot prevail against destiny. So Muhyiddin became more powerful, and Baba, his strength being unequal to his opponent, was defeated. From then onwards, Baba's mind was made up. He changed his entire dress. He started wearing the long kafni, a langot, and a piece of cloth tied around his head. Of the gunny bag, he made his seat. The gunny bag served as a bedding. He found contentment even in the rags that he wore. Poverty holds the highest sovereignty, 1,000 times greater than the grandeur of the nobleman. Allah befriends the poor, so would say always. Gangagir also had been in the same position once. Fond as he was of wrestling once, while he was engaged in the sport, he suddenly grew weary of it, wanting to renounce it. As the opportune moment came, the words of the Siddha came to his ears. This body should rather wear itself out in sporting with God. These words of grace fell on his ears even as he was engaged in wrestling. He renounced the world, took to spiritual path. His mat is on an isle situated near the twin streams of the river Godavari near Puntambe, and there are his disciples too, eager to serve him. As time went by, Sai would only answer the questions put to him, would never talk to anyone of his own accord. During the day, he would be seated under the neem tree. Sometimes he would be seated in the shade of the horizontal branch of the babul tree, which grew by the stream at the village boundary. Sometimes, when it pleased him, Baba would wander off an afternoon in the vicinity of Nimgaon, a mile or so away from Shirdi. Sorry, I'm trying to read from the book exactly as it is, but sometimes I may make some changes. Hopefully, nothing that will cause, but I shouldn't. It should be exactly as the book. The famous Trimbak Dengle was the Jagirdar of Nimgaon, and Baba Sahib was a descendant of his. Baba was very fond of this Baba Sahib. Whenever Baba took a round of Nimgaon, he would go to his house and would love to spend a day talking to him. He had a younger brother, Nana Sahib by name, who had no son, due to which he would also always feel very sad at heart. The first wife had dim chances of getting one, so he married a second one. But no one can escape the decree of fate. Mysterious are the ways of destiny. Then Baba Sahib sent for Sai's darshan, and by his blessings, the son was born to Nana. Thereafter, Sai's fame began to grow. A large number of people thronged Shirdi for Sai's darshan. The news reached Ahmednagar, which is a district place. In Ahmednagar, Nana used to move much in the government circles and was influential with the officials, amongst whom was also Chidambar Keshav, who was a secretary to the district collector. Nana wrote a letter to him saying that he should visit Shirdi with his wife, children, and friends for the darshan of Sai Samartha. The visit, he said, was worthwhile. In this, many began to come to Shirdi, one after the other, as Baba's fame began to spread and ranks of his followers swelled. Though Baba needed no company during the day, he would be surrounded by his devotees. After sunset, he would sleep in the dilapidated mosque in Shirdi. Remember, in those days, phones were few and far. People, if you send a letter, it would take days to reach, and maybe they would send a telegram. There was no social network, no internet. So, this was all by word of mouth that people knew about Baba in that day and age. Chillum, tobacco, and a tumbler was constantly by his side. Baba wore a long, flowing kafni covering his head with a piece of white cloth and always had with him his baton. He would tie around his head that piece of clean white cloth taken behind the left ear, twisted firmly like the matted hair of a Gosavi to form a shapely headgear. Covering himself with such clothes, he would sometimes go without a bath, even for 8 days at a stretch. Barefoot, he walked and used only a gunny bag for a seat. That piece of sackcloth was thus his seat always. The comfort of a cushion he knew not, and found contentment in whatever he had. That old worn sackcloth was his favorite seat, which was forever in the same place, day in and day out. That was all there was for a seat or as a covering. He wore a kaupin, and kaupin is also known as a langot, um, which basically forms an underwear, if you know what I mean, in those days, and no sheet or covering. To ward off cold, there was the dhuni, of course. Um, so all the saints from the Nath Sampradaya always have a dhuni, and Baba was from the Nath Sampradaya, means like from the Dattatreya. So he was the incarnation of Dattatreya. So facing the south with his left hand resting on the railing, Baba would sit on his sackcloth in the mosque, gazing into the dhuni in front of him. He seemed to be offering into the dhuni oblations of the ego, along with all the desires and various affections of the mind. In fact, all the temptations of the worldly life by various wiles and ways. And that raging fire in the dhuni he fed with logs of conceited knowledge and raised the banner of Allah by chanting Allah Malik ceaselessly. And just how spacious was this mosque? It was but the space between included betwixt two cross beams in which he lived, sat, moved about, met everybody, slept. The mattress, the cushion, they have all come now when the devotees have gathered around him. But in the beginning, the devotees wouldn't, could not go near him without fear. From the year 1912, everything changed. It was from that year that the transformation of the mosque really began. Where there were knee-deep pits and holes in the ground in the mosque, it was paved overnight with Shahabadi stones on the strength of the devotees' labor of love. Before he came to stay at the mosque, Baba used to live in the takia, or the resting place for the fakirs. He spent a long time there and was quite happy. It was there in the takia he used to tie ghungru around his ankles and dance gracefully to the beat of the tambourine. He would also sing melodiously. In the earlier days, Sai Samarth was fond of lighting up the lamps, and he would himself go and ask the shopkeepers for oil to light them. Tumbler in hand, he would himself ask for oil at the grocer's shop and fill it in the earthen lamps. He would then burn the lamps bright in the temple, in the mosque. This went on continuously for some days. He was very fond of worshipping the lamps and would celebrate Diwali, the festival of lights. Strips of cloth he would twist to form the wicks and burn lights in the mosque. As for the oil, he would bring it free every day. Once all the grocers conspired against him, thinking, now enough of this daily wearisome nuisance. Later, when Baba came to ask for oil, as was his daily practice, all of them refused. What an amazing thing happened. Without a word, Baba turned back and placed the dry wicks in the earthen lamps. The grocers were watching with amusement as to what he would do without oil. Baba picked up the tumbler from the parapet of the mosque. In it, there was just a drop or two of oil, which was barely sufficient to light a evening lamp. He then poured water in that oil and drank it all up, offering in this way to God. Then he took pure water. This he poured into the earthen lamps to wet the wicks, and lighting them up, showed how the lamps would burn brightly. Seeing the water just thus kindled into flames, the grocers were astounded and said to themselves, this was not a good thing that they lied to Baba. Without a trace of oil, the lamps burned all night, and everyone began to say that the grocers did not deserve Sai's grace. Oh, what marvelous powers Baba has, said the grocers, and repeated that they not only sin by their falsehood but needlessly enrage Baba. However, beyond anger and hatred, all this was further from Baba's thoughts. He had no enemies and no friends. To him, all creatures were equal. And now let us continue with the tale where we left off. That is Mohiuddin triumph over Baba in wrestling. Now listen very carefully to the story that follows. In the 5th year after this wrestling incident, a fakir Jawahar Ali by the name was a resident of Ahmednagar, came to Rahata along with his disciples. Choosing an open space near the Veerbhadra temple, the fakir set up his camp. But the fakir was really very fortunate. Had he not been so, how could he have had such a famous and delightful disciple as Sai? There were many people in the village, of whom quite a few were Marathas. Among them was a Bhagu Sadafar who became his attendant. The fakir was very learned. Quran Sharif was at the tips of his fingers. Many people, some selfish, some spiritual, and some pious and faithful, became his followers. He began constructing an Eidgah, a place for prayer. Some time went by. He was then accused of defiling the temple of Veerbhadra. Then the construction work of the Eidgah came to a halt and the fakir was driven out of the village. From there he came to Shirdi and stayed with Baba in the mosque. The fakir was a sweet talker. The whole village adored him, and the people said he cast a spell on Baba too and charmed him completely. You be my disciple, he said to Baba. And Baba, with his playful disposition, assented. The fakir was delighted and he took Baba out of Shirdi. With an eminent disciple as Baba, Jawahar Ali became the guru. Then they both decided to go and live in Rahata. The guru did not know his disciple's marvelous ways, but the disciple knew his guru's shortcomings, but never did the disciple show disrespect, thereby observing the duties of a good disciple. Whatever command came from the guru's mouth, whether proper or improper, was obeyed. No sooner it was given, he even carried water in the guru's abode. Thus the days passed in the service of the Guru, and then it so happened that he would come to Shirdi only once in a while. This happened, just listen to what followed. This began happening repeatedly. In fact, he now stayed at Rahata for most of the part. The people started feeling that Sai was bewitched by the fakir and was almost lost to Shirdi, whereas people thought it was by his yogic powers that the Jawahar Ali had bound Sai to himself. Baba's plan was altogether different. It was his way of destroying the ego. And yet, how could Sai have any ego or conceit? So the listeners will naturally reason. But then, such conduct was for the good of the people, which was also the mission of his life. But the villagers of Shirdi were Baba's loving devotees and had great affection for him. Staying away from Baba in this way appeared quite improper to them. The villagers were greatly agitated in their minds to see Sai so much in the power of Jawahar Ali, and were in the serious thought as to how he could be won back. As gold and its luster, as lamp and its light, so was the inseparable state of this guru and disciple. And they both had this experience of oneness. A group of devotees from Shirdi then went to Eidgah at Rahata, making plans in their mind how they would try very, very hard and would then return all together, bringing Baba back with them. But Baba took a stand quite to the contrary. This fakir is very hot tempered, he said. Do not try to persuade him, for he will never let go of me. You now get out of here quickly, for he will return from the village presently. So terrible is his wrath that he will make a clean work of all of you. His anger is very fierce and will turn him red in face. Go, go, be gone instantly and take the road straight to Shirdi. What should be done next, they thought, for Baba speaks contrary to all expectation. Meanwhile, the fakir came back quite unexpectedly and began to ask them, so, you have come for this lad? What are you discussing? If your intention is to take him back with you, you might as well not take the trouble. It will be in vain. Though he said so emphatically at the outset, in the end, even he yielded to the pressure of the villagers and said, take me also with you. We will all take this boy with us to Shirdi. Thus the fakir came back with them too. He could not bear to be part of Baba, and even Baba could not let him go. How was this possible? Was something no one could understand. Sai was Brahman incarnate, while Jawahar Ali was full of misconceptions. When put to test by Devidas and Shirdi, all these misconceptions exploded. Devidas had a beautiful figure, lustrous eye, and a handsome face. Devidas was only 10 or 11 years old when he first came to Shirdi. Such was this Gosavi of tender years, with only a langot round his loins, who had at that time put up at the Maruti temple. Appa Bhil and Mahalsapati frequently visited him. Kashiram and others provided him with food, grains, fuel, etc. He gradually gained in importance. 12 years before Baba came with the marriage party, Devidas had already come to stay in Shirdi. He taught Appabhil to write on a slate and made everyone recite the Vyankatesh Stotra, which he taught and which he knew by heart. He conducted these lessons regularly. Devidas was highly enlightened. Tatyaba, that is Tatya Ganpati Patil Kote, made him his guru, and Kashinath and others became his chief disciples and followers. The fakir was brought before Devidas, who engaged him in the religious debate. With his ascetic powers, Devidas totally vanquished the fakir, who was then driven away from Shirdi. As he escaped from Shirdi, the fakir went and stayed at Vaijapur. Years later, he came to Shirdi and bowed humbly before Sainath. All his misconceptions about himself being the Guru and Sai, his disciple, were dispelled, and by repentance he was purified. But Baba also accepted him with respect as before. Such were Baba's inscrutable ways. The issue got resolved when the proper time came, but till then Baba honored the Guru Shishya relationship. If he considered himself a guru, it was entirely his responsibility. But as a disciple, Baba knew and performed his duty perfectly. This is the moral of the story, which Sainath himself put into practice. There is no better state than that one should completely surrender to one's guru, or that one should totally accept that the disciple as one's own. Without this relationship, one cannot one cannot cross the ocean of worldly life. This is one lesson of this story. Rare indeed is the man who will be daring enough to firmly resolve to shed his ego and conquer the fortress of the egoless state. How ingenious speculations of one's intellect are of no avail. He who wants to attain his highest good must conduct himself without conceit or ego. He who has burned out the conceit in his physical body is the one who will find fulfillment in his human birth. And to attain salvation, he will then accept the discipleship of anyone. Seeing the desireless state in so young and comely a figure, all the people, both great and small, were struck with amazement and wonder. The bodily functions of a realized soul work out according to his past karma. But he is not burdened by the prarabdha karma, for he is no longer the doer of action. Just as the sun cannot remain in the darkness, so also the man of enlightenment cannot remain in a state of duality. For the entire universe is in his own self. He dwells in the Advaita, that is the non duality. Non duality means that the person who gains the knowledge of non duality and experiences it feels like he or she is part of the whole universe, and yeah, yeah, and they are, and vice versa. So the universe is in them and they are part of the universe. So I wish we could all attain that. That is enlightenment according to me. Because then you fall in love with everything, everyone. This conduct as guru and disciple has been narrated in detail as described by Malsapati, the great devotee of Sainath. But now let this story be. The next one is even more profound and will be related in its proper sequence. Be attentive while you listen to it. What was the condition of the mosque earlier, and with what toil it was paved? How no one knew for certain whether Sai was Hindu or Muslim. Baba's yogic practices such as Dhautipati and Khandana Yoga, Dautipati is cleaning of the internal organs. He would remove his intestines and clean them. And Khandana Yoga was severing and reassembling of the organs or the body at will. He used to do that to remove all the karma that he acquired by healing his devotees. Yeah. And how he took upon himself the karmic sufferings of all the devotees. All this will be narrated in a proper manner without omissions later on. Hemad surrenders to Sai in all humility. This narration of his story is his prasad or grace. By merely listening to this sacred story, all sins will be destroyed. Weal be to all. Here ends the 5th chapter of Sri Sai Samartha Satcharita, called The Reappearance of Sai in Shirdi, as inspired by the saints and the virtuous and composed by his devotee Hemad Pant. Om Sai Ram. See you next Thursday.